Hi everyone, welcome to my review of True Grit from 2010. So yes, a Coen brothers film, and here we are to talk about a western again. And there will be spoilers. I'll say that now in this review. So yes, if you haven't seen this film, certainly I'd recommend it. That's for sure. And then come back to this perhaps, so you don't get any kind of plot details given to you. If you kind of are interested in this film, but yes. This film, is something that I've been looking forward to for a while, and finally getting around to, seeing this Sunday it was actually, so a few days ago now, and yes, it's a film that I picked up on Blu-ray very very recently actually, a very cheap one to be quite honest, and yes, I really wanted to see this film. Been going through the kind of the films of the Coen brothers very very gradually, on this channel. Of course, and yes, different films from them, and hopefully, by the end of this year, I would kind of have reviewed all their films really. But this film is one I was particularly interested in. Being a massive Western fan, I'm very much, I hold. I think the Western genre is right up there with my kind of favourite genres. As I've said before, it's something I'm always very rarely am I not in the kind of in the mood to watch a western, any kind really, whether it's a kind of a wacky western really, or just something that's more subtle. This film, I thought this would probably be one of them ones, and I had actually seen a couple of moments, a couple of scenes just after this came out, but I wanted to actually watch this film fully on Blu-ray, and here it is, of course. And yes, finally owning this film, and I just wanted to see this on Blu-ray, of course. Westerns, especially ones that are known for some of the best visuals, I have to really see in the best way possible. And this film, I'm so glad that I finally got this on Blu-ray, and have added it into my collection, of course, and have acquired this film. And I think it's an interesting film because it's of course a remake of this original, although it's very different from what I hear and from what kind of I have seen as well of the original. Actually some of the original, I believe when I was much younger, I've seen a couple of bits of that, and certainly I don't think I've seen it all the way through or anything like that. At least I don't remember seeing it all the way through, but I do remember some parts. But in that sense, I can't really comment on the exact perhaps differences with these two films, these two versions, but a lot of people do say that it's very very different anyway, and of course John Wayne is in that original, as we know, 1969. But yes, this film, it's kind of it's a one that actually it's more popular overall to that original, and it's a film, it's very very acclaimed, and if you kind of look at best westerns, this is kind of often regarded very very highly, but when you look at the Coens, Coen brothers films ranked, perhaps maybe this one isn't maybe near to the top, or in the kind of top 5. Perhaps at times it is, but I don't really see it too much. So it's very interesting to see this film. I thought it's going to be interesting to kind of see this all the way through, and to kind of compare it to their films, because I personally think they are at times at their best, absolute masters of cinema, and certainly some of my favourite kind of modern filmmakers, that's for sure. But a few of their films, among my very, very favourites of the kind of the century really, and yes, just some of my favourite kind of comedies really, a couple of them, and of course Fargo. I've not reviewed that yet. We'll get to that. Such a wonderful film too. But there's many of their films as well that I kind of feel are underappreciated. The Lady Killers as well. It's a film that I watched last year, of course, for the first time, and I thought that was actually a lot better than I thought. Compared to what people say about that film. But this one, I watched this film, and I think, let me just say, I think based on the first 50 minutes, and actually, also the kind of most of the last half an hour, to this film, excluding the ending, which is kind of an epilogue, but the actual ending we'll get to. But based on that, these kind of segments of the film, especially that first 50 minutes, this really blew me away, and I think I was kind of having to think, is this now my is it my favourite Coen Brothers film? That's how much I loved it. It's just I was in my element. Westerns, of course, and just the music. Carter Burwell, who's done most of their scores. There's a couple that he's not done, but most of the Coen Brothers, films are scored by Carter Burwell, of course, and including Fargo, of course, and The Big Lebowski. But this film, he didn't do Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and that's a film I've seen as well. But yes, he done the score for this, and I think this is definitely my favourite score. To a Coen Brothers film. I'll say that. Some of the kind of high points, in the score, particular tracks, of course, especially, including the opening, the kind of sequence, absolutely stunning, so emotional and just wonderful. Full of emotion. This score, it really adds so much to this experience, and yes, I was just blown away by this kind of first 50 minutes in particular. This of course, this character, of course, of Mattie, and she's played by Hailee Steinfeld, and basically this character who recently lost her father, and it's kind of recounting this, and it starts with the kind of seeing his death, kind of not exactly seeing how everything pans out there of the death, but you kind of see his body and stuff, and kind of narration at the beginning, and then of course most of the rest of the film is this character Mattie Ross, of course, trying to basically bring justice to the killer, and kind of yes, of course this character of Tom Chaney is kind of believed to be the killer, of her father, and he's played, of course, eventually when you see him by Josh Brolin, so that's very, very interesting, of course. Him bringing in previously No Country for Old Men, of course, which is just one of my favourite films, and it was great to see him here. Let's just say that was in it a bit less than I thought it'd be, of course, because he is on the front, as one of the four main characters, and I guess he kind of is, but it mainly focuses on three characters, of course, Mattie being one of them, of course, and Jeff Bridges, quite regular, at least in Coen Brothers films. He plays, of course, the kind of deputy U.S. Marshal, Rooster Cogburn, and he's the main kind of character who Mattie turns to, to kind of seek out this killer, and at first he's hesitant. Eventually he agrees to kind of go, with Mattie, and of course Matt Damon, referred to as LaBeef, he comes along as well, although he's hunting this kind of this Tom Chaney character for a different kind of event, a different murder, and he doesn't agree to kind of help her, in that sense. So it's very it's kind of a really grounded setup. It's not something where they all just straight away agree to kind of go on this kind of adventure. It's very, very gradual and very believable. But just speaking on that first 50 minutes, I was really blown away. The opening sequence is one of the best to a Coen Brothers film. In fact, it's probably my favourite, actually. And just the music, wow. Carter Burwell, this is one of the best modern scores that I've heard, actually, and it's just absolutely stunning. There's kind of a moment, she arrives on the train, of course, Mattie, at the beginning, and just it's kind of very similar to Once Upon a Time in the West, of course, with Jill. If you've seen that film, she arrives at the station fairly early on in that film. Not the kind of opening sequence to that film, as of course quite an extended sequence there. But yes, that moment, of course, you see the kind of shot of the town. It's kind of very similar to that. I was very impressed. Let's just say that. And yes, it was just seeing this world building. Just experiencing this kind of universe that they were setting up, the kind of balance between maybe not quite their usual comedy, actually, but definitely kind of in some ways Coen's comedy with this drama and this kind of just this kind of grounded world with these mythic qualities as well, and this kind of edge, their comedy. injected there, it was just perfect. It really was. I think up until that 50-minute mark, this is flawless. I was absolutely loving this film. I was blown away, and it was so emotional. So investing, so enjoyable. To see this initial team up as well, and just to kind of get this ease into this world as well. Very very relaxing at first. Seeing this town, it's just perfect writing, direction. Just acting. Let me say, Hailee Steinfeld gives the best performance of the film. She is perfect in this film throughout. Even though we'll get to some flaws later on, in the film, I think her performance is actually one of the things that carries this film, even when it kind of slight dips, unfortunately. In the middle of the film. Let's just say that. I love this film overall. I'll definitely reveal that. But it does take a little turn. After that kind of first, more than the first act. Let's just say that. But Hailee Steinfeld, she is absolutely perfect in this film, and I think she gives the best performance in the film, really. And I think her character, that kind of, it ties in, of course, the performance, obviously, but the actual character, for me, it's one of the best characters in a western. That's just what I say there. Just absolutely so well written, and I just love the kind of, as well, the kind of the bond that she had, that grew, of course, throughout the film, but a very unique, kind of relationship, especially between her and, of course, Rooster, played by Jeff Bridges. It's such an earned relationship. First, of course, he doesn't want to kind of help her out at all, and just doesn't want to know her, but really it patiently kind of develops, and then, of course, they do go on this kind of adventure, of course, to kind of bring about justice, at least, of course, over this killer, Tom Chaney, but it's more than that. And Matt Damon, of course, as well. Once they all them three are together, I was thinking, wow, this film is just so perfect. I was thinking, what could unfold now? This is going to be probably my favourite Coen Brothers film. That's all I say. And I was just loving this film, and these kind of moments of comedy. Of course, when she's crossing the river as well, and just how epic it was, and the kind of what was to come. The subtle hints, the sense of wonder to this whole kind of world, this Western film, this adventure, this narrative, so perfectly set up, and I just absolutely loved this film. I think it was just so investing. Unfortunately, and this being a spoiler review, I can get into it, of course, but it does take it takes a downturn. There's a couple moments. It's kind of immediately after Matt Damon's character of LaBeef, unfortunately as well, going out of the film for quite a bit. Around this kind of middle mark, he kind of goes off, and these two characters, Rooster and Matty, of course, are kind of together more, but you don't see, of course, Matt Damon for a bit, with them really, in many regards. But yes, it starts to kind of, there's a couple of encounters, you kind of see of these, random characters really. There's kind of this guy, this guy with a bear kind of mask on, and you kind of know what I'm on about there. I don't know his exact name, if he's given one, but there's this character that comes into it. That scene really, as soon as that scene came on, I was kind of, I was a bit disappointed. I was thinking, I hope the rest of the film isn't going to kind of be like this. It wasn't. It was very different to the rest of the film had been, and there's a couple of scenes, unfortunately, kind of in succession here. For about 20 minutes is when the film is definitely at its weakest. And then really shortly after that, it starts to pick up dramatically, and I think the last 30 minutes of the film really, excluding the ending, which we'll get to in a moment. I think that last kind of 30 minutes or so, it's just absolutely stunning, and it kind of brings these threads together wonderfully. Most of them, and it's just these wonderful kind of moments of where, of course, Matty is in kind of peril, and of course Jeff Bridges, his character, as we know, does eventually kind of come to save her, from dying. Of course, in that cave, and of course, she does kind of achieve what she set out to do as well in some regards. Of course, as we know, things wrap up with Tom Chaney, aka of course Josh Brolin. I think he is great in this film. Really, really is. I would have liked to have seen more of him though, possibly, but Matt Damon as well. He was so good in this film, and a very different character that he plays to his kind of usual roles in that sense. And I just think he was great in this film. I'd love to see him in more westerns. That would be great. But yes, this film, it has a wonderful final act. I loved everything really going on here, and the villains, are definitely kind of brought together well. That's for sure. I think these moments, of course, these shootouts, absolutely amazing. The way the film is shot in these moments, of course, and edited is just really stunning. And I loved the kind of the scene on the kind of cliff edge as well there, and these relationships were so well built up, in that kind of perfect first 50 minutes that I was rooting for these characters, of course, and wondering how this would pan out, of course, and I was just once again, kind of pleased to see this film really picked up again and really masterful, until we get this kind of sequence, of course. Matty's getting taken to kind of get healed, of course. Jeff Bridges' character, of course, of Rooster, is kind of riding her to safety, and she, of course, as we know, she's been bitten by that snake, and of course, and he tries to save her, of course, and we have this kind of sequence that's referred to as the ride to death, of course, and I was just brought to tears by this sequence. Kind of brought together spiritually the kind of this whole kind of narrative so wonderfully. The music there once again, it's so emotional, this film, in places, and this score, really it just brought me to tears, and this whole kind of moment, it's just such a moving kind of sequence, and it's a very sad moment, of course, with the horse as well. Really wonderful stuff. The Coens really delivered a wonderful sequence there, and I thought, wow, if this kind of comes together in these last moments, this could definitely still be kind of maybe close to being, or possibly being, kind of a masterpiece. But unfortunately, the ending comes along just after that. It kind of cuts off as well, which I was kind of disappointed in. But once they kind of stop off at that house, it kind of cuts to 25 years later. We have this kind of narration from of course, a much older, Matty, and the ending to this film, that last kind of 4 minutes or kind of 5 minutes there, she kind of tries to see what's happened basically to these characters, as we know, and you see this kind of course, this character Matty, she's now got one arm, of course, because of what happened, but yes, unfortunately, with all respect, despite this being definitely among my favourite westerns, I think the ending is so bad, just in my opinion, personally. I think the ending is so dreadful that it really does bring the film down. It lessens my kind of the payoff. The payoff is, even though really it's an epilogue, but it's because it kind of, the film does hinge on the ending in so many regards. I mean, an ending can really affect a film, but this really was so bad. I thought, just in my opinion, this is my take on it. It was so out of place. It didn't make sense whatsoever. It didn't feel sincere. It felt cold, and it just did not make sense for this character. At least, in terms of film, you can say that that's life and stuff, what happened and what panned out. But really, in the sense of this film, this narrative, and the kind of relationships were being built up, and for the film to have Matty just not caring about these different moments, not seeing these characters and what's happened to these characters, I just thought, what's the point? You could have just ended it on that kind of previous sequence, and actually it would have been more fulfilling, even though it didn't culminate in the way that it could have done. It really, this ending, the actual kind of epilogue, if you will, really just, I just couldn't believe it, and it's kind of, I just thought, everything's just going wrong here, for what I wanted from the ending. I just thought it was very kind of, I felt cheated by the ending. It did not fit the rest of the film. It was actually very, very different in the way it was just made. I think this kind of ending sequence, it just felt very rushed as well, and yes, it just did not make sense. It didn't kind of feel like the rest of the film at all, and just to kind of undo maybe. Although of course many years later, so I can separate at the same time. To kind of think, at least some things kind of paid off before that, and I can still love the film in the final act, but that ended really bad, unfortunately. So it did bring the film down from being this at least bordering masterpiece. Despite that, despite the ending, despite even I didn't even like the kind of song choice there. The way that kind of was performed, actually, unfortunately, and the kind of use there was. I thought maybe they should have stuck to the score there. The kind of score there, instead of of course leaning on the everlasting arms. That kind of piece there. The rendition, in my opinion, I just didn't care for it. It really took me out of the experience, actually, and yes, I didn't like the way that Matty was portrayed in these last moments at all, unfortunately. So yeah, the ending kind of was a bit sickening. Unfortunately, I really was very disappointed with the ending. I think really as well, maybe just for the record, in terms of films that I really love overall, this has been one of them. I think this has got one of the worst endings ever to a film that I do love. So there you have it. I think very disappointing. We won't dwell on that, although it really is one of my big flaws of the film, and it's one of the only flaws really, aside from some moments, of course, in that kind of middle segment of the film. I think this is pretty much a perfect film, but that ending really does affect my kind of experience, and for that reason, I can't say overall I think this is a masterpiece. Maybe I'll feel differently on a rewatch, but for now, I think it's very close, to being that, for a lot of the film. But the ending just really affected it. But having said that, I have really fond memories of this. My experience, of course, the other day, and I think it's a film that means so much to me overall. I think just these characters, these relationships, these kind of visual moments. This film is shot masterfully. It really is, especially the moments early on, and that kind of moment, the ride to death sequence is staggering. Conjuring up images, that's kind of very much John Ford, comes to mind, and I think these moments as well. You kind of see the kind of character, of Rooster, early on, seeing him getting questioned, of course. That sequence. It's just absolutely stunning. The lighting, the kind of the way in which the character is portrayed in a mysterious way, and kind of there is comedy in there, but there's not too much revealing as well of the character at the same time. There's different moments of exposition, but it's just, I thought that was a genius moment, sequence of just blocking reaction shots, of course, by Hailee Steinfeld. She's so good in this film, of course. I just love the charming kind of relationship that she has with these different characters. Matt Damon's character, Jeff Bridges' character as well. So good, and I think she's such a strong character. Just in every department. She really, even though the kind of moments in the middle, I wasn't liking anywhere near as much. I didn't love them moments at times. I think I was so invested in these characters, and I think her performance in particular really carried the film and just uplifted different moments that may be a bit darker, a bit less enjoyable. I think because I was so invested in her character. Really, the arc came together so wonderfully as well. Until the kind of epilogue ending, kind of thing there. I think that's the reason I still give this a remarkably high score. One of the many reasons, really. It has a kind of flawed middle, one that I didn't love at times, but the rest of the film, aside from the ending, of course, it really is stunning. It's one of my favourite you know, it really is. It is one of my favourite films. You know, of the kind of 2010s in that sense. So yes, of course, you know, overall, despite my kind of my main, you know, two flaws of the film, you know, of course, the middle, at least, you know, kind of 20 minutes in the middle, kind of act of the film, and the actual ending to the film, which I unfortunately think is dreadful. That's just my opinion, with respect, but you know, because of that, you know, I can't give the film full marks or anything, but despite that, I will give this a very, very high score, an extremely high rating, because, you know, I really loved the film overall. I think, you know, it could have been my favourite Coen Brothers film. You know, I must say that to kind of get into that kind of status is something else. But you know, I thought potentially this film very much could have been my favourite, my absolute favourite Coen Brothers film. I loved it that much, especially the first 50 minutes. There was no flaws, and it was just exceptional cinema. Really magnificent film, mythic. You know, full of charm and just amazing characters. You know, I still think, you know, the kind of trio of these characters together when they were together, I think just some of the best characters in the Western, really. And I especially do think that Matty is one of the best, actually, you know, Western characters, you know, just ever, really. And it's a shame about the ending, and it's a shame that the film kind of is kind of, you know, to sum it up, varying in quality at times, you know, in that middle portion, you know, and then it really picks up massively again, in my opinion. So it's a very interesting film. It's kind of surprising, actually, that the Coens kind of made a film that was, you know, inconsistent like this, because it really, the highs of this film and most of the film really is absolutely mind-blowing, masterful cinema, and just you know, wonderful, you know, kind of a wonderful Western. You know, these guys, I think they really they're just usually at their best when they kind of are making kind of westerns. You know, the kind of peaks of these films, and I think as well, you know, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Actually, you know, that's a film that I've seen. I've not reviewed yet, but the kind of some of that film is some of their best work. Actually, some of their very best work, and yes, this film is no exception. I wouldn't say this is one of my kind of top 3 Coen films overall, because, you know, it's kind of a little bit varying in quality, but you know, the ending is just really, unfortunately, atrocious. Yeah, it's just my honest opinion, but of course, you know, I do love this film overall, so I have to give this film an extremely high rating of a 95%. You know, that is a high rating. You know, that really, really is. I think, you know, I was kind of torn. I was thinking, you know, could I maybe I could give this film lower, because, you know, it really it was a bit inconsistent, and that ending just really did not work whatsoever. You know, it's a very, very bad ending, but, you know, at least in my opinion. But despite that, I do think, because of how much I love the rest of the film, really, and just how much I was invested, how much I was moved and uplifted, and taken to a real spiritual place with this film, and just invested in this main character, Matty. The performances in this film mostly are perfect, really. You know, Matt Damon, Josh Brolin, Barry Pepper as well. You know, in the film, he's absolutely brilliant in this film. Yes, of course, Jeff Bridges, you know, is just flawless in what he's doing. He really is. This is a wonderful film, and of course, Hailee Steinfeld outshines everyone in this film. She is perfect in this film. She is by far, for me, the best character in the film. And of course, she's the protagonist, but, you know, she really, despite that, regardless of the fact that she's the protagonist, and we have to root for her more, you know, despite that, she's by far the best character for me. And really, you know, even when the film kind of dips in the middle, she's still, you know, her and Jeff Bridges, you know, etc., really still hold the film together in these parts. And I think that's why it's a 95, you know, not lower, because the middle act is definitely a lot worse. You know, it has some flaws, and it's got a couple of scenes that I'm not as invested in, you know, at all, compared to the prior and later act. But despite that, it's really mainly the ending that just really does not work at all. So 95 is very accurate for my kind of investment, enjoyment to the film. My kind of how much, you know, it just it moved me, you know, enthralled me, and it just made me, you know, just so invested, and you know, taken to another place with these characters, of course, and this this world. The way the film is shot is masterful throughout. The music, of course, by Carter Burwell is some of the best music I've heard of the century. Really, it's just really stunning, and I think it just so wonderfully edited. This kind of ride to death sequence as well, especially. Wow, really brought me to tears. So the 95, I certainly think makes sense, and if anything, on a rewatch it would maybe go up, but because of that ending for now, I was so thrown off by that kind of really atrocious ending. Really unfortunate to kind of say that. I'm not bashing on the film. The ending really, it really kind of shocked me actually. Just how it did not fit. How insincere it was. Just the cold. Kind of rushed, forced ending. The kind of forced, depressing, outcome, if you will. I don't think it just didn't make sense to me. Based on the rest of the film, it was kind of this bittersweet film. It's this kind of balance of kind of hope, comedy, and this kind of dark edge the film has, and this kind of this realism perhaps. But the ending is just completely and utterly one-sided in that sense, and it just didn't do anything for me really at all. Even the choice of music there, but despite that, I really absolutely adore this film. I think this could have easily been called a masterpiece by me. Despite my flaws, an exceptional western, in my opinion, is definitely going to be on my list. That I'm working on, or it is on there. I've added it actually very recently onto my list of favorite westerns of all time. That will be, eventually published. I can't say when that will be. It'll be a video that I'll do, or a kind of a couple of videos, a series, if you will, of kind of my favourite westerns. We'll do a kind of an ordering, of course, a list, and that should be fun. And it's a very much a work in progress because there's many I've not seen, and as many as I need to rewatch, of course, to kind of get the exact ordering there. But this film really would have been up there with my kind of possibly, well, definitely my top 10 kind of favourites, and it's still on there, it's still on the list, wherever that may be. But I think the potential of this film was a perfect masterpiece, and my favourite Coens. Personally, I know that's kind of very very bold to say, but because of the flaws, especially the ending, really, unfortunately, it's not quite there. But it is a great film. Of course, I did focus a lot on that in the kind of disappointment, but I think that was important to do, because so this is just my thoughts, how I feel about a film more than a specific kind of analysis. That's not really what I do. Particular scenes perhaps, or different things there. But I really think to kind of voice my opinions on my experience with the film, I had to focus, my actual true emotion on say the ending of the film, because I really did not like it at all. But there we have it. It's a great film. I love this film so much, and I think it's definitely on my list of favourite films as well. And definitely on my favourite westerns list, for sure. And I think, yes, I look forward to talking about more westerns with you viewers, of course. And I will hopefully, this year as well, see the original True Grit, all the way through, and yes, give that one a review. But I think this one really is a stunning film. It's a wonderfully shot film. The editing, the music, the characters, really stunning. These main characters are flawless in the writing department, the acting, perfect casting really here. Especially kind of Jeff Bridges, and of course Hailee Steinfeld. She really is perfect in this film. The performance is unbelievable, really is. Such a great character. One of my favourite characters in a western actually, and it's just a stunning film. The world building, especially the kind of first 50 minutes or so, it's something truly masterful from the Coens. And yes, I would certainly recommend the film. It's a kind of definitely a flawed film, in my opinion. And I wonder, the endings, it's really very unfortunate. The kind of it did hinder my kind of my reaction to the film, but despite that, I think the rating is very accurate to my kind of overall investment, enjoyment, and connection to the film, and where it took me spiritually and stuff. And really such a felt western, so full of atmosphere, melancholy and just hope as well. And the themes of hope are definitely there. Determination and just family. Of course, and on being as well. This kind of act of justice, or at least an examination maybe of justice and what it kind of means, in the general sense. But yes, we'll leave it there. I think this film is wonderful. It really is. If it had gone in certain ways, it would have been my favourite Coen Brothers film. But a 95 is an extremely high score from me, that's for sure. And I think this film is very much, a wonderful film, despite the kind of flaws and especially the ending. I think, wonderful film, and certainly going to be, my favourite westerns list and favourite films list, absolutely. So yes, indeed. True Grit, the 2010 version. I'd certainly recommend it, and definitely proud to have this in my collection. It's a stunning film. Really, of course, at times exceeded my expectation. I didn't think it'd be this good, and I think it's a flawed film. Unfortunately, I can't say it's my favourite Coen Brothers film overall. We'll see what that is on my ranking, but it could have been. It really, really could have been, and that's just an honest opinion of someone who's a massive fan of westerns. But this would have been the one for me. That I just I kind of gravitated towards, perhaps. But yes, despite that, a great film and a 95% from me. So yes, tell me your thoughts on this. I'm very, very interested to hear what everyone thinks on this film. And yes, whatever the case, leave your thoughts if you want. That'd be great. And just thoughts on different Coen Brothers films, perhaps. What is your favourite Coen Brothers film? That'd be really, really interesting to see. And also, if you've seen the original as well, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Kind of general thoughts. Of course, I've not seen that all the way through. At least I don't believe I have. So, not spoilers, but yeah, just general discussions on this and westerns and Coen Brothers films. And yes, cinema, of course. Yes, it'd be great to hear, regardless of your kind of opinion on the film. I think it personally is a flawed great, but very close to being, a masterpiece in some regards. And I think overall, if it had been, as I say, the consistency of what it was, it really would have been one of my absolute favourite films, really, of the kind of the century. And my favourite Coen Brothers work, surpassing a number of stunning films that they have made, including Fargo. Wow. So yes, that's my review. That's just my thoughts on the film, personal thoughts, on this film. And yes, tell me your thoughts. What do you think? And yes, as always, thanks for watching.